Hi everyone, and welcome to the November edition of Circular Digest. I'm delighted here to have John Marchant and Robert Sharp joining me from Reuse Foundation. John, Roger, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely, sure. My name's John Marchant and I run Reuse Foundation, and this is Roger.
Yeah, Roger Sharp, I'm one of the trustees.
Great, thank you guys so much for joining. So first I wanted to ask you both, how did you come up with the idea of Reuse Foundation?
Well, it is born out of frustration, to be honest. We have a little bit of experience in plastics and plastics packaging. About 10 years ago, we were working at a competitive intelligence company with clients like Unilever, Colgate, J&J, PepsiCo. And we were asked to track competitor activity on plastic packaging. So we started to prepare a monthly newsletter, which still happens. And through that process, we started to learn about the problems that plastic causes, the difficulties of plastic recycling, and the fact that reuse is really the best solution, but that very few companies were pushing that way. We started to learn about the efforts to have voluntary agreements, but realized that not a lot was happening. And then about 5 years ago, we thought we'd set up a reuse company. So we set up a company called LESS that has a national reuse service in the UK. And we've done projects in India and in Vietnam. It won grants from Innovate UK and RAP and the Indo-Pacific Plastic Innovation Network. And basically through that process, we realized that reuse was the best solution. Everyone says that, Greenpeace, World Economic Forum, UNEP, but very little is done. It's not pushed from a policy perspective. Consumers don't really understand that. And whilst there's many good ideas and small businesses, they lack support, financial support, guidance, just general help. So we looked around and we felt there was something of a vacuum, and we thought we'd give it a go.
Great. Yeah, no, that sounds very interesting. I think we find that reuse is still such a small proportion of circular action currently in a lot of businesses, right? So you ran a groundbreaking campaign called Beat the Sachet in India. Could you explain what this campaign was, what you hoped to achieve, and kind of what you did achieve?
Sure. Well, the fact that the reason we got going on that is because we were concerned and motivated by sachets. I don't know if you know much about sachets, but small disposable sachets, we use them for tomato ketchup mainly, but in parts of Asia and especially India, they're used for many personal care products. And by one estimate, about 70% of the market in India is sachets. You can't recycle them. Unilever has spent millions trying to recycle them. They never get picked up. So they get discarded, and they typically go down the drain into the waterways and on into the oceans. And sachets themselves are a primary cause of ocean microplastic. And so we wondered whether it'd be possible to set up a reuse solution that would prevent the waste. So we worked with NGOs in India, and we worked with low-income communities, mostly women, to devise a reuse solution. And we tested it. It ran for nearly 2 years, and it was successful.
And could you explain to those listening why sachets are so hard to recycle?
Well, they are a multi-layer composite. It's not one sort of plastic. I think there's 9 different layers. It's impossible to put it through standard recycling processes. The best that happens to them is that they get burnt. But typically they just wash down the rivers, and you see them in the riverbed.
Some companies invested millions of dollars in trying to recycle sachets at scale, Unilever particularly, but most of those operations have been shuttered. They've just not been successful. There's an estimate from 2 or 3 years ago that something like 855 billion sachets produced every year, which is almost a trillion.
Wow.
Now it might be a trillion. And we have a sort of a favorite little calculation which says if you put 1 trillion sachets end to end, and each of these sachets are say 3 inches, 75 millimeters, they would reach the moon and back.
Oh wow.
100 times, and that's just in 1 year.
That is a crazy visualization when you use that figure to really really kind of make clear how many sachets we're producing. And then you have the fact that they're not recyclable, they're very easy to cause ocean pollution, and you realize how big a problem it is. So what were the kind of, I guess, key learnings from this campaign, and what do you hope to do with it next?
Well, the key learning really was that it worked. Just the process of offering a reuse service, it's not easy. You have to provide some education, some community outreach, and it's a learning process both sides. But it worked. So we gave people a bottle. We only did shampoo. We wanted to do a range of products, but we couldn't get any of the large companies to cooperate with us to see if we could test a reuse solution for other categories of product. So we did this shampoo, and we couldn't get a standard brand, so we developed a brand. This is called Marchant shampoo, which means my shampoo in the local language Marathi. And so we gave a bottle to women. It's all women, pretty much. And we put at local Kirana stores a very small jerry can like this to where they could go and get their refills. Like I say, we ran it for nearly 2 years, and at the peak we were stocking about 5,000 sachets a month. We did a survey of 118 consumers, and 100% preferred using the bottle over a sachet, and 100% wanted to have refills in different categories. So on those metrics, it was successful, but we didn't prove that it was financially viable, and that's what we're doing next. So Reuse Foundation has a campaign called Sponsor a Village, and in Q1 next year, we're going to set up a larger scale system in hopefully 30 villages in Aurangabad to prove that it can work at scale. We'll have the same shampoo, but we'll have a total of 5 other products, the 5 most commonly used products in Indian villages, to see if we can attain basically scale and commercial viability.
What are the 5 products going to be?
Shampoo, hand wash, dishwash, floor cleaner, and toilet cleaner.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. So interesting.
And again, sorry, Katie, but again, we have been unable to find brands to work with us. So we are creating our own brands. We've locally sourced products. We have the right verification and certificates, and so they're the ones we'll be using.
And what is the hesitancy from big brands? Is it that they don't deem it to be commercially viable yet? Is that the main barriers that you are coming up against?
I'm sure that's one reason. It's operationally complex, is reuse. There's different ways of doing reuse, but reverse logistics can be difficult. This thing costs just about 5 pence, whereas you can buy a sachet for 1 pence. So the bottle itself is difficult. You have to annuitize the cost of the bottle and all the infrastructure that goes with it. You have to change people's behaviors. You might not be able to offer the product they want. Consumers are expected to have a wide assortment at the stores. There's lots of things that make reuse difficult. But at the end of the day, they're not doing anything wrong. Or rather, they're not doing anything illegal, these companies. They know that it's not recyclable. They know it. Unilever knows it goes to the oceans. But it's not illegal.
And just touching on that, so do you think policy will play a big part in scaling up reuse?
I think policy is essential, yeah. We don't fully internalize the cost of single-use plastic. There's no benefit that goes to non-polluting solutions, and that would be good to change. But in the case of sachets, the government's hands are largely tied because low-income consumers can't afford a larger bottle. The only way they can afford the product is in very small doses. And so the government can't tax them, it can't ban them. But if it sees that there's a viable reuse solution that is zero waste, well, then maybe it can change policy.
Yeah, definitely. So what I'm hearing here is that a successful reuse model needs to take into account cost. It needs to take into account consumer convenience as well. All of these things need to work together to successfully scale up and reuse.
Well, I think consumers need to know that the product is sort of what they would normally get from a bottle, and that includes sort of hygiene issues, concerns. I mean, there's a lot of effort, a lot of money going to washing, cleaning, sanitizing, reusing containers, and it's quite an effort, as we found.
Yeah. I mean, I think how consumers perceive a product is a big part as to whether they buy it or not. I remember they're reading about some issues sometimes with recycled plastic is that it's not completely clear, and it can have a bit of a grey tint, and then consumers think this product is not safe to drink, or if it's a cleaning product, it's not actually that clean because of that. So that kind of psychology is quite important in bringing consumers along with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So we've touched a little bit about the challenges on scaling reuse. Is there anything else that we haven't already mentioned that you deem quite a large challenge in scaling reuse?
I think consumer attitudes is a big hurdle. Consumers have been told that plastic recycling actually works, and if they do sort, then they're doing their bit. But we now know that actually is something of a myth. And promoting recycling just really perpetuates a sort of a linear supply chain. So that's changing consumers' attitudes, educating them, changing their behaviors is a big hurdle. And then the economics, operationally, like I say, is complex. But we've done it before. I mean, we had the milk round. Coca-Cola for many years had reusable bottles. Beer companies in Sweden, Brazil, they do as well. So it's completely doable. There just needs to be the decision to make it happen.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to me that we've had these reuse systems before the rise of supermarkets and this ultra convenience life we live in. That was the normal way of getting milk. I think I used to remember getting milk when I was maybe 5, and then it stopped, and then it doesn't happen anymore. There's no milkman anymore. So we've done it before, but now we're almost too used to not doing that and having all this single-use plastic and going to the supermarket and buying literally anything you want in a single-use packaging.
And there's so many different ways of doing it. You can refill from home. You can go to a local store. You can buy concentrates and dilute. And it's just many options. There won't be a singular solution.
And there's a lot of contextual differences that we have to take into account. I imagine the context in India is very different to the context in kind of Europe or the UK.
Yeah, that's very true.
Incredibly. So I think there's also an element of I don't want to call it enablement, but I think it would be nice if there was more focus on a reusable content metric. There is something that is produced every year called the Global Commitment. It's run by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP. There are several hundred signatories to this, and a lot of these are plastic producers, plastic users, including companies we know, brand and retailers like Unilever, PepsiCo, Walmart, those types of companies. And there's a number of metrics in there, but it's mostly about composition. It's not about total production. It's mostly about composition of production, and they focus on virgin plastic reduction, post-consumer recycled content, but also this sort of composite metric called reusable, recyclable, or compostable content. That metric has this program has been running since about 2018. Each year the report comes out, the progress report comes out. We just had the recent one. Since 2018, the RRC, reusable, recyclable, compostable metric, has grown from about 63% to 72%, on its way to a 2025 target, hopefully, of 100%. Doesn't look like we're going to get there for most of the companies. But within that, recyclable is almost all of it. Compostable has grown from 0 to pretty much 0 in those 6 years. Reusable has grown from, I think, 1.5% in 2018, but it hasn't actually grown at all. It's gone down to 1.2% on average for brand and retail signatories. Now, we have a theory about why this is the case. Is because we think the recyclable hurdle is just the easy one to get over. Because you can, as far as the Ellen MacArthur Foundation report is concerned, a packaging design can be deemed recyclable if it is in fact recycled at a rate of at least 30% in a group population of some 400 million. That population can be dispersed around the world, which seems like a big hurdle. But if you actually think that the 400 million is just 5% of the world's population, and you apply that to a 30% recycling rate, in fact, a packaging design, a plastic packaging could be deemed to be recyclable if it is actually recycled only at a rate of 1.5% globally on average. Not such a large threshold to get over.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So in your view, kind of, one, that recyclable metric isn't actually that ambitious, and two, by combining it with reusable, recyclable and compostable, brands are almost able to hide their progress because there's no specific reusable metric.
Yeah. The brands can choose which they do, basically.
Yeah.
And of course they do the one that's the easiest and the cheapest. And to make it, sorry, Roger.
Yeah, no. So I was just going to get down into the detailed data. Sorry, but you carry on.
Well, it's just that if you're a company, to make plastic packaging recyclable, you just have to take out the bits of the plastic that you can't recycle and put other bits of plastic that technically can be recycled. The fact that they probably won't be recycled, and that even that recycling isn't a great solution, is somewhat academic. So it enables them to do something that's not great. And as Roger said, there's no cap on total production.
Yeah.
So as long as they do this, the fault is pushed onto the absence of recycling capacity. But in many countries around the world, the recycling capacity is very limited. And for decades and decades, they're never going to have the recycling capacity. So it's a really messed up solution.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just on that, there is a sort of as an annual metric comes out from, I think, a group called Earth Action.
Yeah.
And they calculate plastic overshoot day, the day on which the amount of plastic waste generated during the course of a year exceeds recycling capacity. And I think this year it was September the 5th, 2/3 of the way through the year. So that goes back to, we don't actually have the recycling capacity to deal with the amount of recycling that we think we need to do anyway. But the other thing is the metrics within the global commitment all voluntary. Some of the companies are stepping back from them anyway. But if you going back to reuse, if you just look at some of the sort of reuse metrics reported by the companies that we know, Colgate Palmolive, for example, its reusable packaging as a share of total is 0.8% last year.
Okay, that's very small.
Yeah, Nestle, about the same. Unilever, 0.1%.
It's not. Sorry, we talk about this as the global commitments from Ellen MacArthur Foundation, but that's not the only place that uses this composite metric. All of the plastic packs run by WRAP, they do exactly the same thing. So you have the same thing here in the UK, but where you have the US plastic pack or the India one, they have that same composite. So again, they're given the local consumer goods companies the option to just tweak their packaging and then forget about it.
I believe, and I could be wrong, so don't hold me to this, but I believe this metric is also used in the packaging and packaging waste regulation in the European Union as well. So I think a lot of countries are starting to legislate with this metric too. I don't know if it was in ESRS, I can't remember, but as in it's a very common metric that has been used pretty much as a standard now. So we've talked a lot about the issues and the challenges with scaling reuse. Where do you see the opportunities?
Oh, I think there's massive opportunities. I think everyone realizes that circularity is the way forwards, and it's probably part of a decadal shift, rethinking how linear supply chains work and coming up with less polluting solutions. But yeah, I mean, we actually don't know a lot about reuse practitioners, and we recently we think it's the world's first survey of reuse practitioners around the world. We've got responses from about 25 countries, just to try to learn more about what companies are doing in circularity and zero waste, and it's fascinating. It's a lot of innovation, lots of great entrepreneurs doing stuff, and yeah, I think it's a growth story, but it's not an easy road.
And why do you think there hasn't been a survey of reuse practitioners before?
I have no idea. Yeah, we were surprised. We thought that would be basic. Yeah. And there's also this issue, which is that people have done studies in reuse. Unilever has done some, Tesco, Asda and stuff. But for the large part, the findings are internalized. They're siloed in corporate documents. They publish a press release about what they've done. But the economics, the operational issues, the critical success factors that failed or whatnot, it's forcing people to redo the same tests. So part of the reason to do a survey was to start to build the process of like having a forum where people can learn, well, we tried this and it didn't work, and so forth. So we haven't got to reinvent the wheel. So
the results of the survey, when are they coming out, and they'll be public?
Yeah, they'll be public later this week, actually. Yeah, probably. Nice. Probably Friday. Yeah, and we hope to do it again next year. This was the first attempt. It was fairly limited, but we hope to do deeper dives and do more specific studies based on it.
Amazing. Well, anyone listening, look out for that survey. We'll share it on Circular Digest too. I'm excited to read the results. So you've talked about Sponsor Village. You've talked about the Beat the Sachet campaign. Are there any other initiatives Reuse Foundation are working on? And how do you see all the campaigns and pilots you're working together to transition to a reuse circular future?
Oh, well, it's early days and we've just started. I mean, really. Well, there is one campaign that has just launched, which is worth mentioning, which is called Refill Not Landfill. And that is a student youth focused campaign. It has a prize pool of at least £1,000. We hope to increase it to 5. And that will be, it's asking young people to create social media to highlight the fact that plastic is a problem, that plastic recycling won't work, that reuse is the solution, and to be positive and uplifting. And so we will run a social media campaign for about the next 6 months or so. And yeah, it will be global, so we'll accept entries from anywhere, just to basically start that awareness, that cultural change, build a campaign. So you asked what we're doing, and I suppose the 3 campaigns that you've talked of hit all the areas. One is the Sponsor Village, where we're trying to prove that reuse can work at scale, even in the lowest income communities, with a novel model. The practitioners is trying to understand more about that group, and the Refill Not Landfill is trying to do some change, some awareness, and so forth. And there's one final campaign that is going. It's called Bottles for Good, and that is trying to seed reuse habits with refill stores in the UK. So we're making available to them a range of refillable bottles, push pumps, and so forth that they can sell in their store at a price they determine. And we ask that 50% of the proceeds go to the charity to fund the work in India.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
So because a couple of the respondents to the practitioner survey are also the stores that we're working with on the Bottles for Good campaign. So there's there are links, and we hope those links will grow and expand over time.
Do you have your eyes on any other countries that you want to get into?
No, but we would say that if there was a point of difference, we would rather be southward facing, I suppose. I think a lot of the policy, the research has been focused in Europe and in the US to a degree. A lot of those policies and those insights have less applicability in the global south. So I suppose that is an instinct would be to, we've done work in Vietnam, we may do more work in Asia.
And Beat the Sachet is all about, if you like, reaching low-income communities, and the new expanded Beat the Sachet program will be focusing mostly on rural areas and rural the rural population in India represents around about 2/3 of the total population of 1.4, 1.5 billion. So it's a huge population, and that sort of pattern could be seen in other countries as well, possibly Indonesia. You know,
I should add that for that sponsor village, we were using a truck, and we wish to use female drivers, which is unusual a little in India. But we've identified 2 drivers, Sapna and Jyoti, and was it this Monday or last week they started the first driving lessons. So we hope that in about 8 weeks they'll be ready to start working on that.
Well, amazing. Yeah. So a part of this campaign as well in India, it's not just focused on the environmental benefits, it's co-benefits as well, with gender equality, with economic opportunities, which are so important when we think of circular economy as a systems change. You can't forget about that social and economic aspects as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's much easier if you can play to other needs and make it synergistic. And at the end of the day, it has to make money. It's not going to stick and get any traction if it's a charitable program. You know, we can work as a charity to prove that it works, but it's only if it's financially and commercially viable will it actually take root and cause real change.
Yeah, definitely. Well, John, Roger, thank you so much for joining this interview with Circular Digest.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your interest, I've got to say. And if any one of your readers wishes to be in touch, we're happy to, have a conversation. And
Definitely. I will link to you both in the newsletter. And yeah, thank you so much for joining. It's been really interesting learning how Reuse Foundation is really working to create this shift to a reusable circular future. So thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Cheers then. Bye-bye.
Bye.